All right, we're gonna get started. We had a couple people that were not feeling real good today, but we have a lot better turnout today than we did last time, so that's good. We are, thank you guys for bringing your hypothetical studies. I remember that we do not have class on Thursday. Happy Easter from me. Hope y'all have a good, safe, long weekend. We're going to cover chapter 15 today just to keep things moving. Like I said, I want to hit as many of these chapters as we can between now and the end. And we might actually make it if I can roll through them and not get off on too many tangents along the way. Hopefully, I can get through this and watch a couple of your guys' videos before we're done today. That's kind of the plan. So let me share the screen over to the PowerPoint. Did I do that right? Yeah, now we have for sure. Okay, so I'm just going to leave it like this because I've noticed I watched, I don't know, any of y'all that have watched the videos, if I actually change it, put it on the slideshow, for some reason it doesn't go through the slides. It just stays on the original one, or it does sometimes. I noticed that on one that I did not long ago. So that's why I leave it on this one rather than making it like full screen. But y'all can see that fine, especially with our new super bright bulb we got going on. Chapter 15, Cognitive Behavioral Approaches to Therapeutic Recreation. So when we're talking about cognitive behavioral, what is that? What are we hitting on there? What's cognitive deal with? Yeah, the brain, someone's intelligence level. For the most part, let me mark him as being here. And how that affects behavior. You know, behavior is very much affected by our minds, and it doesn't necessarily have to be your level of intelligence so much. I mean, you can, I've talked about how powerful the mind is, and I think I've told y'all some in here about my dad and how he's so wonky with medical stuff. He got the vaccine, and the worst thing he could ever do is to read the little side effects may include, because you know what he's going to get? Every one of them on that list. And you know why? Because you read them and they went up here and they manifested themselves because of that. A lot of the stuff, like I'm telling you, if your mind thinks something, your body will do it. That's how you see people that, that are very positive, upbeat, who have really severe illnesses and things, tend to have a higher rate of coming out of it, than someone who lets it just eat them up, But that's a little different than what we're talking about in the therapeutic recreation side of it. But we're going to talk about some key concepts that have to do with cognitive behavioral therapy and talk about how we can use it in recreation practice. So, like I said, and like you guys know, a person's thoughts dictates how he or she reacts to a situation. There's that whole ABC thing that we've all heard about. You've got an antecedent, a behavior, and then a consequence. And what happens, you have something is going to happen to you, and then before you react, whether you even realize it, it may be that fast. Before you react, you think, and that dictates how you react to the situation. I mean, it's like if you put your hand on a hot stove, you're going to jerk it off of there before you even realize you do it. But that's because your mind says, "Oh, that's hot." It's before you can even really gather that you're thinking of that. But that's kind of what it comes down to. But your thoughts dictate how you react to any given situation. A lot of times in our patients, whether it's people who have substance abuse issues, whether it is people with dementia, individuals with developmental disabilities, children, people who come from poor backgrounds, not money wise, from bad situations, are a lot of times they have irrational or inaccurate cognitive interpretations of situations, which can lead them down roads, like it says here, of extreme emotional response or mental illness. It's kind of like how agoraphobia can start. Everybody know what agoraphobia is? Like fear of going places, fear of going outside. People who suffer from agoraphobia, they weren't born that way. They didn't, as a child, they probably weren't scared to go places and run out. It's a learned response. And when it comes down to it, a lot of times, agoraphobia, it relates with like panic attacks and anxiety, and people relate situations or places as negative. And before long, in their mind, their interpretation of what could happen is what leads them to the point of agoraphobia. Even though looking at it from the outside, you can say, well, nothing's going to happen to you if you go to the store to get a loaf of bread, but they're scared to death to go because they've, in their mind, decided that something bad is going to happen if I leave my house, So that's kind of what's happening in this whole inaccurate cognitive interpretation. So when you're going to do interventions that kind of help our patients with some of these inaccurate or irrational cognitive interpretations of what's going on, then these cognitive behavioral interventions, they show clients how thinking impacts their emotions, and it teaches them to reevaluate their thinking, or at least take the time to look at other options other than the first thing that comes to their mind. Like hear it from another person's side, hear it from an outsider, get a rational point of view that is not them, for lack of a better way to put it. So people that are applicable to use this cognitive behavioral therapy, people with depression. Obviously when you're in a state of depression, you are in a mental state that's not good. And a lot of times you become kind of irrational with your thought processes there. Anxiety, agitation, phobias, obsessive compulsive disorder. I think a lot of people are starting to get this obsessive compulsive disorder, or at least I noticed it at the, especially when COVID was really kicking off with the hand washing. Wash the hands, open one door, go wash the hands, touch a cup, wash the hand, it was almost OCD for although it was for the betterment of the person's health, but still, people who need pain management, we've talked about how having pain as a chronic situation is going to be a negative effect. It's going to place a negative effect on you cognitively also. It puts you in that kind of depressive, agitated, anxious state because you're in pain all the time. It's hard to be, butterflies and rainbows when you're hurting all the time. That's just a fact. It also deals with people who are overly passive. We talked about assertiveness. Isn't that what we covered in the last class? I think we talked about assertiveness and how a lot of our patients aren't assertive enough, and that's something that we can help them with. And so those people are also, can be educated on how to get better at their self-directed behavior, choosing their own path, deciding I am going to do this. I'm not, more rational thinking comes from that. Efficacy, that's just letting people know that they are going to be able to do things, and that's where we as recreation therapists need to be not only leaders and teachers and enablers, but a lot of times cheerleaders. You know, I like to see a lot of positive reinforcement going on in when people are providing activities as much as possible without interjecting and messing up the flow of what's going on. Decision making. All right, back to my family again. My mother can't make a decision to save her life. If I ask her a question, it's going to take her a day. You know, it's a thing like it's the big joke about husband and wife or boyfriend and girlfriend, where are we going to eat? And it takes an hour to decide, you know, because nobody wants to pick. This cognitive behavioral, you know, therapeutic recreation can help people to be more decisive, basically. And a lot of people, especially, you know, I was talking about agoraphobia, you know, people who have situations like that, severe anxiety, depression, don't feel a lot of times as though they have freedom and control of their life. You know, they don't feel like they can do the things that they necessarily want to do all the time because they're afraid to do that. So reality orientation is kind of a big thing that comes in this training sometimes. So then we get into rational emotive therapy. So, you know, when someone is rational, they're thinking clearly. That's the way I think of that, you know, the easiest way to put that. And then emotive therapy, we're talking about someone's emotions. So we want them to have rational emotions. We all know that a 2-year-old is not going to have rational emotions. I see that at my house all the time. You know, he wants his tablet right now. And if he doesn't get it right now, it's like on the floor, kicking, throwing things. You know how kids can throw when they're little, they throw big fits. And a lot of ours, you know, when you step into a situation like where I used to work at NMRC, we were talking about people who had developmental ages who may have been in the 2, 3, 4-year-old age range, but be my size. And so they tell you that they want to go swimming and it's not their day to go swimming. And then they have a fit like that. Then you kind of have a problem, you know, because you got a big person throwing a big fit. So it becomes more of an issue that way than when it's a 2-year-old that you can just, you know, grab by the head. Oh, probably shouldn't say that. But it says here, people are capable of rational thinking, but tend to use illogical thinking when they're dealing with life's demands, especially things that they consider to be stressful life demands. You know, something that's going to put a timeline on them, or they already feel like they are overburdened with you know, things in their life, and then you get something added. You become, rather than becoming more focused, which is where you need to get to handle a situation like that, a lot of times you'll see people become irrational and more discombobulated over everything. People place unrealistic standards on themselves, as here, I must succeed. We all know that we're not going to succeed in everything that we ever try. That's just not life. That's not how life works. You know, gosh, Michael Jordan, we've all know, most of y'all probably know his story. He didn't even make the high school basketball team his first year. And look what he ended up doing. You know, it just goes to show you that we aren't always going to succeed in everything we do. And someone who has that I must succeed or else attitude, that's not a rational emotion to have, or a rational mindset to really be in. That must word, and replace it with I want to succeed. That's good. I think we all can work with that. But if you put the word must in there, then you're putting more added pressure on yourself. Thinking habits are evaluated and challenged through a dialogue with the therapist. So this is a situation where I would say this type of therapy is much better in, at the very least, small group or even one-on-one setting. Probably best even in a one-on-one situation if possible, because you're going to be talking about things that are going to be sensitive in nature, perhaps, for your clients to open up to you. They're going to be more likely to do that if it's just you and them rather than a room full of people, for the most part. The client learns how absolutes negatively impact their interpretation of events. So absolutes, that's talking like I must succeed. When you set that absolute onto things, then it makes things like failure becomes much more of a doom and gloom event if you place that high of a, board on yourself of how high you need to get. I got to do this. I have to succeed. When you put absolutes like that, then your interpretation, you're going to constantly feel like you're below the bar and failing all along the way. And that's a bad way to try to go through a process. So then we talk a little bit about personality, the ABC theory of personality. There is an activating event, and I like how they did how this slide is done, because there's some examples on here for you guys. The activating event might be forgetting to take out the trash, but the belief was, I have to get that trash out today. Do you have to get it out today? Really, truly? If it's got like chicken bones or something in it, you probably do, because or diapers. But all in all, if you don't, it's not going to change your life if you don't get the garbage out today. If you left the house and forgot to take it out, it's going to be there when you get home. You can go throw it in a dumpster somewhere if you have to. If you miss garbage day, you're going to figure out a way to deal with your garbage for a week. So it's not that steadfast, in stone, must happen situation. So that belief of I have to leads to the consequence of like rage and panic because they didn't do it. And now, is that a rational thing to become enraged about or panicked about, forgetting to take out the garbage? Not to me. Some people, it may be, but to me, that's low on my totem pole of things that would set me into a rage, I can assure you. D, disputing intervention to challenge irrational beliefs. So that's where we step in and we're having this conversation, and we are not through belittling, not through saying, look, you're nuts. It's not that big of a deal. Why are you acting like that? I mean, that's not how it goes. You may be kind of thinking that, but that's not how we talk with our patients and our clients. It's just going to be like, look, think about this from, I'm going to tell you from my side of view. It's not that big of a deal. It's nothing that you can't overcome. If nothing else, this will be a reminder in the future. Next week, I bet you won't forget it. But you can take care of this, and it's not going to be a big deal. And you tell them the rational side of things that they're unable to see, whether it's because of mindset, whether it may be they have high anxiety or OCD. Someone with OCD, if they forgot to get the trash out today and they have this thought, I have to get the trash out, the rest of their day is shot if they didn't get the trash out. it's over. Like, they're not getting anything else done until they get that trash out. And that's not rational not to be able to carry on with your day, but that's how it really works. So sometimes we have to dispute through our intervention irrational beliefs in a constructive way. We have to remember that. During that process, what we hope for is an establishment of an effective philosophy, which is going to lead to a new set of feelings for our client, you know, where they can come to terms with what we're saying, and, you know, we can reach an agreement that, yeah, maybe it wasn't as big a deal as what I thought. You know, next time I'm going to try not to get that upset. And if you've done that, then you've basically made it A through F on this little chart. All right, here's when we get into these ones with the names, like I say, I don't sit up here and drill this now on the test. There's questions about, like, say, Beck's cognitive therapy, so you'll know that will be in chapter 15, and, you know, stuff like that. So, but what this is about, it's a cognitive behavioral approach that uses different behavioral techniques. And when we're talking about behavioral techniques, it plays in line a lot of times with, you know, psychology. And I don't know how many of you have much of a psychology background or have taken psychology classes, but these behavioral techniques all kind of have a psychological component tied in. But there's 10 axioms that lay the foundation for this cognitive therapy, and we're going to go over those in just a second. And what it is, it's a kind of a fancy little sentence here. Structures of cognition known as schemas are the central pathway to psychological functioning or adaptation. That's a very wordy way to put his cognitive therapy ideas. But let's look at these axioms. So schemas that they're talking about, structures of cognition, that's how we think. They're the central pathway to psychological functioning or adaptation. The way we think is going to affect how we adapt to situations, to where we are, to similar situations in the future. Number two, meanings associated with schemas control psychological systems and activate strategies for adaptation. So if we have something that is causing a negative feeling, a negative consequence to us, obviously we want to make an adaptation, to make a change, to improve that situation. So that's what we're talking about here. And you need to have a degree of rationality to make that happen. Cognitive systems interact with other systems. That goes back to how I was, if you read, this medicine may cause blurred vision, headaches, and sleep paralysis. You're probably, you may have all of those things, because you have put that in your mind and kind of planted that seed. I'm not saying that I'm not telling y'all not to read your labels on your drug, on your prescription medications, but I'm saying that the power of suggestion is very, very strong. Meanings derived from these schemas are translated into specific patterns of emotion, attention, memory, and behavior. And what you want is to not have specific instances or situations have negative effects, negative emotions, and negative memories that are tied to them that are going to carry over into the next time. That's kind of the play on that. Core beliefs and the resulting schemas are correct or incorrect based on the goal they're meant to achieve within the context of a particular situation. This is where you can actually talk when you are talking with your client. You can talk through proper ways to handle situations and ways that could be improper, and that helps to kind of train on what is actually the right way to handle a situation. If they're not cognitively able to do that on their own, sometimes they can use some training to learn a more appropriate response to something that's going on. Number 6, people are predisposed to certain patterns of maladaptive or inaccurate cognition. So everyone is predisposed to inaccurate thoughts at times. I think I told y'all about my kid getting in a fight at school because he thought he got moved in line, and this kid 2 spots back from him was talking to another kid and was laughing about their own little conversation. My boy thought that he was laughing at him. He didn't like that, and he had an inappropriate, very, very maladaptive response to the situation. Predisposed, aren't you guys like that sometimes, where you're just like, if they're talking about me, you know, like you get up from the table or something and you're like, I bet they're talking about me right now. You know what they're probably not doing? Talking about you. We have this inaccurate thing that just your mind just tends to go there, and it's ingrained in everybody. Number 7, psychopathology results from this maladaptive meanings regarding the self, the environmental context, and the future. So if someone has, that's how you get into a situation like agoraphobia. You have a bad experience somewhere or in a certain situation, you're going to want to, and God forbid it happens to you twice, because then you're really going to want to avoid that situation, that place, even though it may not make rational sense for you to do that. You know, that's where the way you think to yourself, the context that you put it in, and the way that you're going to react in the future all tie together. Public meaning and private meaning should be considered in regard to events in one's life. You have to realize that what someone thinks may not line up with what you think the general public should think, especially in cases like we're talking about of developmental disabilities, of people who have substance abuse, who've been abused before, who have extreme anxiety, things like that. We can't expect everyone to have the same thought processes. That's not logical for us to assume that. There's 3 levels of cognition: preconscious, conscious, and metacognitive. That's one of the axioms they have here. Schemas facilitate adaptation to the environment. That is the whole thing. You want to promote schemas that are going to promote positive adaptation to environment. You know, that's where we say someone is upset, rather than flipping a table, going to a quiet area, counting to 10, taking some deep breaths. You know, that's a more appropriate response to the situation. So you're adapting your reactions, and by using rational thinking, to a more appropriate situation. There's some other cognitively oriented frameworks. Constructivism, that's mental representations of how the world functions, where new concepts challenge current schemas. Right now, there's so many different things going on in the world that everything is upside down right now. So you don't know what anyone believes, and everyone has such strong feelings on everything, whether it be coronavirus, masks, vaccines, mandates. You know, there's so many things that it really affects, and the way, the stronger someone feels about these things, the more they're going to have behavior that has, you know, that goes along with their feelings. Self-efficacy, that's the extent to which one is confident that he can complete a given task. That's something that we want our clients to have. That's something that we want to promote in them. We want to try to, that's why we always have talked about through this whole class about setting goals that are what? Attainable, that are reachable, that are, that make sense. You know, I know that my 5-year-old boy can't shoot a regulation basketball into a 10-foot goal yet. He's small. I don't know why he's so little, but anyway, he's small and he literally can't throw a big basketball that high. So we got a goal that will lower and raise, and he's got one of those kind of mini balls and he can wear it out on that. I've given him something that's attainable. He feels that he has self-efficacy. He knows that he can do it. He knows he's not going to make it every time. Now, he's still at the age, I talked about how this whole behavioral cognition thing comes in with kids too. You know, if he misses 3 times in a row, he's liable to kick the ball and say, I quit. I can't ever do this. You know, I'm like, dude, you just made 4 in a row. Go get that ball and come back. You know, like it just, so remember who we can work with this whole cognitive framework. Attribution, what that is, it focuses on one's explanation for why events occur. And sometimes we attribute things accurately and sometimes we don't. Trying to think of a good example, and one doesn't just jump into mind. You know, you think about 911 when the trade centers got knocked down. There were people that missed the train that morning, or their car wouldn't crank and they didn't make it to work. You think they attribute that to like God saying it's not your time? They should, because any other day they would have got the same thing everybody else did. You know, just saying there's what we all are going to have an internal explanation for everything that's happening around us, to us, and what we're doing. So the things in therapeutic recreation, the way we can use this behavioral training, clinical reasoning, or just logical reasoning is a better word that I like. And like I say, this is better done in small settings, one-on-one, where you can talk freely. I think that's a positive thing. Teaching clients the ABCs can be a situation. Identifying and evaluating cognitive distortions. That's where we have to sometimes be the bad guy, you know, and say, look, I know that it feels like, you know, this is the worst day ever to you, but, you know, it's from my point of view, this is not really that big of a deal. I just want you to hear me out, you know, and you have a conversation, and usually you can get someone to rationalize what you're talking about. Helping them through just some gentle nudges, realizing that they're having some cognitive distortions. So things that they're thinking, the things that they're feeling might not be accurate to the true situation. Coping with emotional distress and pain. Everybody copes differently, obviously. So, and you can't force anybody to, you know, change the way they're going to cope with emotional distress and pain. But you can, at the very least, give them some other options, some different ways of thinking about it, some distractions, some coping mechanisms, things like that. clarification of values. That's where you may have to get someone to tell you, like, all right, you've got all these things to do. Tell me which one is the most important that you get done. And I want you to focus on that. It's like making a to-do list in order of importance. That would be a situation where you help people to clarify what is the most important to them, thus making them put their stress on the things that are the most important, where they'll get those done and not have as big of a blow up if they don't finish number 5. It's not as bad as not finishing number 1. You following what I'm saying on that? That's by helping them to clarify their values. Changing thoughts by changing behaviors. That's intermixed. It goes both ways. Once someone changes their behavior, eventually, think about exercise. Someone who doesn't exercise at all decides, all right, I'm going to get started on an exercise program. And it's hard for a while to get going. And if you skip a day that it's just going to be over. I'm not going to be able to keep going. If I miss a day, I better not miss a day. But at a certain point, most people, I think they say it's like 3 months that something becomes a habit. For most people, if someone changes their behaviors, their thoughts about exercise, say after that 3 months, their thought is not going to be, oh God, I can't miss. I got to get up and do this. It's going to be more like, I got to get up and do this because I want to. And their actions have through time changed their thoughts. So a lot of times our behaviors lead the way your mind is going to think. Most of the time it's the opposite. Obviously, we're led by what our brain tells us, and then we do these things. But eventually you can retrain some things through repetitive positive behaviors. And then experiential programs, getting people to do things that they haven't done before, can provide some, put them in places of uncertainty. They go through an experience and see success, they're going to feel positivity and should show them that they, are making the right positive behavioral choices. All right, so cognitive behavioral therapy, it's a platform where interventions can be developmented. I just made up a word for you guys. Developed and implemented. It's based on how one's thoughts affects one's emotions and behaviors. That's one of the main things I want you to take from this, is that how strong our thoughts can be in regards to behaviors, especially in some of the clients that we would work with, because they don't have that rational thought process that says, oh, I really shouldn't do this. That's the key. And what we hope to get out of this cognitive behavioral therapy is that it can help our clients recognize how thinking, actually taking the time to think something through, is going to impact emotions. Even in a state of bad emotions, if you think about it and can think yourself out of it, that can become something that is a strength through time. Also teaches them to monitor and rework their ways of thinking through multiple sessions of maybe just talking with them and saying, how are you feeling today? Well, I was okay until I was late for lunch, and then ever since then, it's just been a bad day. And you might need to say, well, did you get to eat? Well, yeah. Was the food good? Yeah, it was great. Why are you still upset? Well, I don't know. And about that point, it'll click like, maybe I shouldn't let this ruin the whole rest of my day, that's about it for that chapter. That's the only one I wanted to cover today because it was kind of deep and wordy and all that. But you do need to realize that we need to realize that we have a lot of effect on our clients by working with their mindsets, not just their physical capabilities and issues. You know, the mind is so powerful in the health of our patients. And that again is what, you know, we deal with the mental side of things, the cognitive side, where a lot of other therapies do not. And that's where we're different, and what made it special to me and made me stick with it for as long as I did, because I enjoyed that side of it, that we got to help the whole individual. So I'm going to stop share here, and I'm going to share the next part. Oh, wasn't trying to do that. I love watching the responses when it comes on. Check the, we got some A1 editing skills in the house today. Anyway, I thought that was very upbeat, very good. It shows. Now, he did the write-up portion. I kind of gave the option of a write-up or talking about a lot of it. I thought that was a good video. It showed, you know, a good activity. And he talked about how the people that are involved in your activity kind of all have different roles, and it's the truth. You know, you'll find that in your groups, that you have someone who may be the mean one, and who may be the funny one, and who may be the glue to the group that keeps things together. So I really liked that, and when I about fell out when I saw the credits at the end. I'm not gonna lie, I thought that was too good. All right, one down. So good job. Let me find the next victim. I guess I could have left that going. I honestly don't even remember whose this is. This is going to be a surprise for me, just like it will for you guys.
Will be Go Fish. Okay. It's a simple card game, and the objective of the game is...
Here, let me make it bigger for you.
Oh my God. Okay. And we'll start off by having 5 cards each. Okay,
Okay.
now put the rest of the deck in between us. So the next step is, since I dealt the cards, you get to go first. Okay?
Okay.
Well, the next step is you call out any suit. So say you have a king. You'll ask me if I have a king, and if I don't, I say go fish. And that's when you draw a card. You take a card.
Okay.
And then I do the same exact thing. I'll ask you if you have a 5.
Mhm.
And if you don't, then you say go fish. But if you do have 5, then I get to take that card. And that's my pair. And so I put that down.
Okay.
And we'll just run through a few times and see if you understand it and see if you work. Okay?
Right.
Okay, you go first.
Do you have any set?
I do not go fish. Do you have any jack?
Do you have any tens?
I do. Do you have any sixes?
Do you have any sevens?
Go fish. Do you have any 5s?
Go fish. Do you have any nines?
Go fish. Do you have any kings?
Go fish.
Really?
Fold.
Do you have any kings?
Go fish. Do you have any queens?
Ooh. Yeah.
Mhm.
No, I'm not. Do you have any 5s?
Go fish. Do you have any nines?
Go fish. Yeah.
He's intense on this game now.
Do you have any sevens?
Go fish. Do you have any 5s?
Go fish.
You are good.
You got any twos?
Go fish. The king.
Go fish. You have any aces?
Go fish.
You can only do one.
Do you have any 2s? Okay, so that is an example of Go Fish, and the golden modality that you can use with one of your clients. So that was the gist of it. So what do you think you learned through this activity?
Probably decision making skills,
Mhm.
what hard to ask for. Maybe some critical thinking that involves remembering what's hard to ask for,
Yeah.
but you didn't have.
Mhm. How do you think that could apply to what we've been working on in your real life?
It can help me with just thinking deeper and just to think harder about certain decisions I make. When it comes to school or just in decide if other people
Yeah.
asking the right questions.
That is what we work on today, and we work on your decision-making skills, because you had to decide which suit that you wanted to ask for.
Mhm.
We worked on your communication. You had to make eye contact with me and ask me clearly what you wanted, and your socialization skills. So just talking through and making little jokes here and there.
Mhm.
You know, we worked on that. Um, so there were a lot of things that you could apply to your real life in the real world, and you did a really great job.
Thank you.
Mhm. Everybody, thank you to my assistant. And what else? That would work. Now for the end questions. I will talk about why I chose this activity. The reason I chose this activity is really simple. If there is an at-risk youth who came from, for example, maybe came out of foster care, you know, it's a really tough world that a kid could grow up in the foster care system. So this could be a gate opening activity that helps them with decision-making skills in the real world,
Gate
or socialization skills, and maybe even anger management. Also critical thinking skills, because you have to think, you know, what type of strategy do I need to use? Or go fish, the number one strategy there is going down the list of suits. So asking, do you have any kings? Okay. Then you move on to the next. You move on to, do you have any queens, jacks, tens? That's really the main strategy that you have with playing go fish. And the domains it addressed, I already went through that. Again, I'll say that it works on decision-making skills, communication, critical thinking, and I feel like critiquing myself, I think it went smoothly. I'll say it would if it did. Can it be improved? For sure, there's always room for improvement. Because this was my first time doing this type of, I guess, activity with another person and trying to teach them something, which is different whenever you're just trying to teach somebody a game, but implementing like actual goals and objectives for them is, I can say, it's different. It makes it a little bit more challenging, because you have to think about what works for the other person and what they have to work on. So I think if I were a little more prepared and a little more comfortable doing this, and I guess it also depends on what type of client I have. So I think I would have to be a little bit more prepared. And probably think of more activities to do, just so I can have more things that I can do with my client, change it up a bit, make things a little more interesting. That's all I've got. So it's the record time. Thank you.
I'm not restarting it, I promise. I saw you freaking out there. I think you were a little hard on yourself at the end. You did a very good job with the briefing up front, with giving the instructions of what, you know, how the game is played. I like that you showed some personality and made it fun. You know, if you had a group, you could teach the group how to play the game, and then you could have different ones playing together. You know, if you wouldn't be available to play with each person as a therapist, maybe perhaps, but once you taught the group how to play it, that could be a game that you could play. And just something else to pick up, you know, you had socialization, you had all the cognitive side of things that she was talking about. You can also, when you're talking about card games or anything like that, if you have someone who has any issues with fine motor skills, things like that, you're working on that also. A lot of different things out of one of the most simple games that you can play. You can hit a lot of different domains in recreation therapy with that game. And you know, it's not a very complex thing. It's something that you could teach most of the groups that you would be working with in recreation therapy how to play it. So we'll call it quits for the day. We will go next class. We're going to do the next chapter and probably watch some more of these guys. So that's kind of the plan moving forward. And I think we watched yours, and I don't think you were here for it. I know. I saw you roll your eyes like, oh, great. But we. Another chance to combine, yeah. We bragged on it. We all thought you did a good job. So, no class Thursday, guys. Have a good, safe rest of your week and weekend, and I'll see you on next Tuesday.